For 20 years, I didn't have a menstrual cycle, and no one could tell me why. I was exhausted, anxious, and in constant pain, and everything I'd been taught in the medical system wasn't helping. And that's when I started questioning everything. Hi, friends, I'm Stephanie, and I was trained in the medical system as a PA. And here's my story of the healing I didn't find there and what actually shifted for me. For years, I didn't feel like myself. I had to take 2 naps a day just to survive. I had chronic anxiety, debilitating abdominal pain and bloating. I was dizzy every time I stood up, and I was without a menstrual cycle for over 20 years. Totally not normal, right? Every time I went to get help, no one could help me. I was bounced from specialist to specialist. I was given prescriptions to manage symptoms, but nothing ever addressed how I actually felt or the deeper why beneath it all. At the same time, I was working 12-hour shifts, commuting 1 hour each way. I was running a family travel blog. I was exercising, and all of that started to feel like too much. Even the thought of taking my kids to the playground felt exhausting. I would fall asleep putting them to bed, and weekend plans started to feel overwhelming. And it started to affect more than just my body, it affected my happiness. The mom guilt was constant, knowing that I wasn't able to show up in the capacity that I had desired. And the partner guilt too, knowing that Ryan was having to carry more than his fair share. And quite frankly, I just didn't feel like myself anymore. I'd been told that I had IBS, so I was given prescriptions. And I remember this one time bouncing from pharmacy to pharmacy prior to a trip to the beach just to find a pharmacy that had this prescription in stock so that I could have some sort of relief during our vacation, even though it didn't alleviate my symptoms to its entirety. And in that moment, I realized how silly this was and how unhelpful this approach was for my health and my healing. Meanwhile, Ryan had been exploring alternative approaches and was having real, tangible shifts. And while I was doing everything I had been taught and nothing was changing, this is when I really started to question the approach. Through plant medicine, I learned that my body wasn't broken, it was overwhelmed. And it had been for a long time. All the symptoms I was experiencing weren't random. They were signals that my body had been sending me for years to try to get my attention. Years of suppressing emotions and constant pushing had finally caught up with me. My body wasn't failing, it was communicating. Given the fact that Ryan was having these incredible life changing results with the use of plant medicines, I also ventured down that path. Around that time, I started working with an integration coach who was a functional nutritionist, and she really introduced me to this new way of looking at food as medicine. And for the first time, things started to make sense. I began learning how blood sugar affects energy and mood, how stress affects digestion and hormones, and how stress can show up in various forms: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So it wasn't about chasing symptoms anymore, it was about supporting my body as a whole. I started asking different questions. Instead of how do I get rid of this symptom, what is it that my body is asking for? Or what is my body trying to tell me? How can I do things differently? So I began nourishing my body differently, slowing down even when it felt uncomfortable, asking for help, feeling emotions I had suppressed for decades, and exploring deeper forms of healing. So it wasn't one big change, it was small intentional shifts over several years. And because of these small changes over the years, everything shifted for me. 2 years later, all of my symptoms that I had been managing were completely gone. And most notably, I did get the return of my menstrual cycle, which felt like a huge life achievement for me. And not meaning to, just a few cycles after that, we conceived our fourth baby, which felt like a huge miracle, given that our 3 previous pregnancies were all through fertility treatments. And although my story may be very different than yours, I share it to show you what is possible when true healing to the root occurs. And the changes I experienced weren't just physical. It was also in the way that I relate to my body. For my entire existence, I had just pushed through and ignored the signals that my body was sending. And now, through this newfound awareness, I started listening to the signals. I honor what my body is asking for and I slow down. And doing this work changed how I lived, more intentional, more connected, how I parent, more present, more patient, and in my relationships, more open and more vulnerable. Because when the body feels safe, everything starts to shift. Now I know that my body wasn't broken. It was asking for help. And when we learn to listen instead of continuing to push through, everything starts to change. If what you're doing isn't working, it doesn't mean that you've failed. It's simply an invitation to try something different, to slow down, to nourish your body, to go deeper. Because when the body feels safe, healing is possible. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if my story or any part of it resonated with you, I would love for you to like and subscribe. Every week I'm sharing new videos on conscious parenting, holistic wellness, and intentional wellness. I'll see you next week.